another card we've been talking about on the show was Echo, and Echo in a surprising number of lists here. I think my math checks out, probably about 20 or so, maybe a little less,
Well,
maybe like 18, but reasonably significant impact.
I think that's really cool. Yeah, I'm super excited to see some of these cards come to the forefront because again, you don't see a lot of these cards on ladder. And yes, people are demanding, buffs for cards like maybe Colossus or, Crystal. You got her rework, but some people still think she needs a bit more of a buff, so you don't see them as much. Like these cards, of sure, like Hawkeye, but there are cards that are very interesting. I think could be very powerful, like an Echo. Uh, yeah, man, we got to see some Echo plays in action. And she's one of those cards that's hard to quantify in terms of how much impact she made, simply because you don't always see the impact. Maybe they held back on a card that they were going to play in that lane and they just said, nah, I have a different route I'm going to go because your Echo disrupted my plan. And you never see the card come down or her stop it. So some people might say, well, Echo did nothing that game, but you don't have the entire story, right? You can't see your opponent's hand the entire time.
Yeah, that it is. And we do know that our first matchup coming in here is going to be featuring King of Canada. So we can start to take a look at, kind of what sort of cards are being run there as we kind of pull up the matchup here. As it looks like, we're already there. Super Scroll, Sun Chi, Stegtron. We had mentioned Stegtron. This is going to be an interesting list.
Yeah, I already see an Iron Man, a Sarah, Stegron, and an Iron Lad. Some iron stuff going on. And the first location being Rickety Bridge, always a very interesting one to have show up in any competitive game. It's, do we have someone that has armor? Do we have someone that has Professor X? Can someone change that to Limbo? Can someone maybe wait a little bit later to really get the impact on it? As we see, is their cursor on their game? Thanos, the Infinity Gauntlet?
Yeah, it is. We've seen King of Canada around here before.
That's wonderful. Fantastic. And a Quinjet coming down. And look, hey, we don't got to worry about Magic doing anything with Limbo this game because look, Limbo's already there just by pure RNG. I'm really liking what we're seeing from the other players so far. And Quinjet, Agent 13, I imagine we'll see Maria Hill or like Agent Coulson, things like that. I'm looking forward to those type of decks because that brings in a surprise factor that King of Canada can't really expect, as he's pretty much bricking really hard right now, doing nothing. But sure, he can change that. Oh, there's the Zabu, just a little bit too late, but could be impactful even though it was a little bit late on this game because of Limbo in play. So maybe he goes Zabu here.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about these cards that added random effects to hands early on of like, would it be really good for the tournament scene where, lists are open? Because, then you could come in here and you could say like, hey, you may think you know what I have, but I could have anything now. And so we'll see how that ends up playing out here if we do actually see some fun like swings that way. Is not a lot of people running this sort of list. As the Zabu is going to come down here. Zabu on 4, not ideal, but getting that extra turn means we'll have a couple more turns to take advantage of this. And with Sarah on 5, there's a lot of this is one of those that could be a very scary final turn for King of Canada.
Yeah, so you have a few ways you can go about it. You can keep that Limbo in play, or you can Scarlet Witch it if you feel like you can make that nice flexibility. Because as you get Sarah down, you're gonna have all of your 4 costs be 2. Scarlet Witch is gonna be 1. This is gonna be a very interesting turn here. Ooh, but a Super Scroll might tell you don't want to go with Iron Man here. That's a huge impact. But you also gave your opponent a Sarah effect and a Zabu effect. So this is very interesting now. Do you snipe Rickety Bridge to try and steal that one on turn 7 if you choose to keep Limbo in play? This is a lot of decreases in cost. Sorry, I was listening to a cat scream in the distance. My apologies.
Yeah, this is a really, really interesting one. So the Iron Man effect, obviously is usually pretty much a guaranteed win at Nidavellir here if there's a way to get that effect off. And so we'll probably want to save that for a last turn, just the opponent knows. That Super Scroll, like you were saying, is going to be massive, especially if you're looking to drop that Iron Man effect. So potentially you're going for Nidavellir. But that's the interesting thing here, is if you can get your Iron Man effect on Nidavellir and set that one up as big as you can ride that off. You know, okay, I'm going to draw Rickety Bridge, or maybe try and do some shenanigans with Scarlet Witch to win it. And then just rely on the massive amount of power I'm going to have from Nidavellir to kind of win that tiebreak. And so both of these players are running something that can change the Rickety Bridge, as we do see a snap coming in here, right? That Rickety Bridge, or even Limbo itself, could be turned off here. Well, no, not so much. The only card that Sims is running to turn things off is actually Magic herself. So,
ooh, so how many of these cards are generated randomly, or how many are actually being run in a? This is very interesting. The Quinjet randomness packages with some bounce stuff going on. And let's see what the Iron Lad hits here in the right lane. It's gonna create an interesting turn 7 as it hits a Jeff. Ooh. So that's a move now. Stegron hitting Super Scroll over to the right. So that does mess things up a little bit, because you could go Scarlet Witch, Iron Man, Mystique to turn off, Rickety Bridge and spread out that. So I would argue, would you Iron Man mid, Mystique left, Scarlet Witch left to try and because in my opinion, you kind of forego the idea of that Super Scroll lane taking an Iron Man, right? So let's move Iron Lad mid, Iron Man mid, Mystique left for Rickety, and then change Rickety Bridge to kind of back up those plays.
Yeah, and I think we are going to see something like that. And so it's got to kind of giving up Nidavellir at this point, and then potentially being able to go into Limbo. I was going to consider potentially going, both Iron Man and Mystique on Limbo to, get the double effect, which, since you need to be putting some power in here. But is going to just try and spread this one out. Maybe a little concerned about, a Rickety Bridge counterplay coming in from Sims on the other side. We'll see how that plays out. To me, this seems a little too spread, but we will see as end turn, considering it, going for 4 cubes here, and they are locking in for 4. Time to see what will happen on the reveal here. Time ticking away. Sims still trying to figure out that last play, because, again, doesn't necessarily know Iron Man is coming, but knows there's an Iron Man in the list, and so is presumably expecting something like that, and it's probably why they moved Super Scroll over there in the first place, right?
Oh, we see a full board Bishop mid hitting Angela, Kitty Pryde right. Let's see, Quinjet left. Do we have anything else disrupting Rickety Bridge? A Ronin coming in mid. Looks like that's going to be too much for the Mystique Iron Man type of idea to really overcome Limbo. And it looks like King is going to be losing all on Space Throne. Makes no difference whatsoever. Looks like King's going to be losing this one and going into the next game.
Yeah, and it would have... Okay, still would not have been enough. Would have been closer if they had gone with Iron Man mid as well, but would have actually tied that middle location. But yeah, and would have lost because Nidavellir was just insane. So King of Canada gonna drop that first round and dropping 4 cubes on it. Big impactful first loss, as we know kind of from watching this. If you lose some cubes early, it can be very, very difficult to come back, especially since, if you get down early, you're very limited in what you can win and can take away from your opponent. You lose your whole snap and retreat, the amount of skill that can be offered by those effects.
Yeah, and I think the randomness, this is like what we were talking about earlier, bounce deck with an interesting little plan B of these random generations of Agent 13, Agent Coulson, and even Quinjet to reduce them. It didn't make the biggest difference, but Ronin was a decent size there at the end to really put them over the top mid, and not one that I imagine King would have ever expected to come down. So very interesting way to go about it. Again, in these types of tournament structures, especially in an open deck list, having random generation that your opponent can't expect, I think could have something to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're looking to play spoiler, it's with the random generation decks, it can be tricky to get, some of that consistency. But if you're wanting to just ruin someone's day who had the perfect list and they were all set to go, that's kind of the way to go here. As see a full hand here coming down as Coulson is going to fill this one up. Has some more cards to make more random cards with Nick Fury showing up. But I guess you kind of have to think right now, if you're King of Canada, you don't want to play too much into that. You're not the, if you're trying to play random cards versus random cards, your opponent has a deck that's built for that. Will synergize with that, right? And so you kind of got to figure out a way here. Okay, how do we get back on track, back on our original game plan here? Is going to drop the Iron Lad and will hit Stegtrodon, which is going to bump some stuff around, put Angela onto Jotunheim, and that's not where you want to have a card go early.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm really eyeing this arrow as a play. I'm thinking potentially, I mean, it's hard to say. It depends on how big that kitty is, right? If you can get this arrow left outside of this armor range to maybe potentially Shang-Chi a big card, I think that's a very interesting line here. But again, you have to think about your setup for turn 6. And I think that King's considering the same thing I'm thinking here, right? Because that arrow pulling a big card that you can Shang-Chi seems very nice here. And it looks like Jotunheim is going to be most likely in your favor, but they're playing into it. See what they do.
Yeah, Arrow is going to yank it.
Ooh,
Magic comes down onto Jotunheim, so we are going to see a 7. You can't say we because
there's Kitty.
Scarlet Witch exists. And yeah, we do see Kitty. Kitty been played a couple times here, is being run in this deck, one of the ones that is running this as a main card. And so here, turn 6. Now, in my opinion, you want to shut down Kitty here and run and drop Scarlet Witch to end the game here. Am I wrong?
Yeah. This is what I would do. I would go Stegron mid, Scarlet Witch on Limbo.
Oh, yeah. That shuts that down.
I think that's the play. Because even if they go Kitty mid, she's at 5 right now, I believe, maybe 6. Hitting her over on Collapse Mine isn't a big deal. I really don't think they're going to be going for that. They're going to be going for either Bugle or Limbo here. But he's going for the long game. Oh, no, he's not. He's going for the Limbo play. He's going for that little extra power mid. I think with Kitty being a 1, they have enough flexibility to really beat you on 12 mid. I would go with the Stegron to just disrupt it. But the Jeff there could make a difference too. So it's a toss-up, either one.
I think they're potentially considering now, since they were thinking about bringing Jeff over, maybe they just want to make sure they're in a good spot in case something gets bumped over. But that's still 12 power. And so the Scarlet Witch is going to come down, shut this down.
15, actually. Ooh, Baxter building. Oh,
that hurts.
Can make a difference.
It is just enough. We get the tie at Daily Bugle, and the difference goes to Canada, who wins it 9-6 in leads. And oh my goodness, Baxter building nearly threw that all into disarray. Stegtron absolutely, it would have definitively won that one.
Yeah,
very good call, Brad.
Look at that! Look at that! I know what I'm a Stegron gamer. Okay, I know what I'm doing with that card. Underrated card, by the way. It's not as it's weird. It's like one you compare to Juggernaut, and I really think it's a pretty good card. As we see, potentially the best play in the game being a turn 1 Kitty Pryde. That's always nice to see. Maybe not as good as the old Kitty Pryde, of course, on turn 1, but still can make yourself a 1/7 at the end of the game. That's a pretty big deal. Versus a turn 2 Zabu. And we like this hand so far from King. Even that Thor, I'm not going to lie, the Thor could come into play just being a 3/4 down the road, especially with the Magic in play. We might be seeing another turn 7 game.
Yeah, that we can. Quinjet, remind me, Quinjet isn't discounting Kitty Pryde here, right? That's not a thing.
No, because she originally started in the deck.
Yeah. Space Throne.
As we see, potentially considering some options with Shuri, Jeff, things like that. I think the Shuri might be the play here into potentially a Stegron or Iron Lad.
Yeah, very possibly looking at obviously Iron Lad is going to give the best value off of Shuri here, as we do want to make a quick announcement to No, I'm trying to. I didn't quite pick up on all of it. I believe, Dan, you were saying. Correct me if I'm wrong. To get your match, if you have your matchups, ignore what it says on the site and find someone on Discord. I didn't collect that whole thing. Brad, did you pick up on it?
I believe you were saying to ignore the timer that was listed.
There
for
we go.
the pairings.
Yes, ignore
Yes,
ignore
so-
the timer.
This voice of God, everybody can hear me on the stream. Please make sure when you're going through your rounds, ignore the check-in timer. CG, the website's having a bunch of issues with it. So as long as you're in chat, chatting with your opponent, create a game, do it. If it awards a win, don't worry. Just put in the chat of who actually won. We'll get it updated. Yeah, just, technical difficulties with the site, but make sure you're playing your games. Don't worry about that.
All right. And we're seeing, so Jeff is going to be able to come into play potentially with that Space Throne, as we see Iron Man coming down mid, pretty much locking that one down. I'm really thinking a Stegron right on Space Throne is the way to go to finish this. And look, I mean, look, maybe it's just the way these games are lining up, and that's a great snap from King here. Stegron seems to be the difference maker at the moment, right? With these locations coming into play.
Yeah, it definitely does. I think one thing to keep an eye on is potentially if other locations get filled up, right? We don't know necessarily what's in Sims's hand. That would be the only thing if Stegron actually can't move a big card out on that turn. And the one thing you also keep in mind is they may not play on Space Throne until 6. So you got to make sure you've got your priority, right? Make sure that you are going second and you're not bumping out. And then you're not bumping out something that hasn't been revealed yet, because that won't go off.
That doesn't matter.
Oh, that doesn't matter with Stegron.
No, he smacks them around no matter what. So it doesn't matter if you're going first or second. As I'm guessing, a Limbo's coming down here on Space Throne. There it is.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, and so right now is going to show up Limbo, which means, a big kind of lockdown middle area there. Basically as locked down as you can get. And I don't think there's going to be too much competition coming in there to fight that Iron Man. And so we're kind of looking at, okay, turn 6 here. If you're playing as Sims, you always got to think, okay, my Limbo could get shut down here, so I need to give myself something reasonable here. Mystique doesn't come down to cop that Iron Man effect. What do you think about the idea of Stegtroning Magic to try and, block up and, fill up one of those other lanes to kind of just say, hey.
I love that idea, especially with an Angela, right? That's so valuable. I don't dislike the White Queen here, especially considering the opponent's deck pretty much maxes out at 4 with Nick Fury besides some random generation, right? So you're bound to get something that's pretty interesting, as we're seeing that would not have worked anyway, as they're filling up left completely, which I'm interested, well, at least for now with Kitty Pryde, as she's going to go back to Hannah as an 8 power. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Can you be 8 power left, or do you just forego it completely and focus all your strategy on Limbo?
Yeah, I think right now you're focusing on Limbo because the Monster Metropolis is already going to Angela, and so at this point you need to be going, I've got an Iron Man effect on both of my other 2 locations.
Yeah,
honestly should be in a pretty decent position for this. Personally, I think I'd probably look at Stegtron Thor here. I don't think there's necessarily an ongoing effect you're looking to grab with Skrull. And so, you can just kind of buff up your Limbo there. I don't think you need to worry about putting anything else at your middle location, Camp Lahai. Honestly, this seems like a pretty solid position to be in for King of Canada. And King of Canada has snapped. So looking to potentially take 4 cubes here and kind of turn it around and, snag that lead back.
Yeah, I would actually consider retreating from Sims here on the other side because you have to beat an additional 8 power times 2, so 16. You're looking at a huge Limbo, and then you're probably not going to be able to catch up on Camp Lehigh in the middle, and being able to smack something away even if they don't fill. If they don't fill, especially like let's say they only have enough to go, Monster Metropolis and then Limbo, and they leave that space open to get Stegron, that really hurts. And as we see the retreat come in, I think that's the right way to go. Lose the battle, not the war, right?
Yeah, exactly. Skilled Theory asking, does opponent run Shang? No, Shang-Chi is not in that list. It's actually a very cheap list across the board. Most expensive card. They have 1 4-drop, which is Nick Fury. Everything else is 3 or below. One of those looking to, drop a lot on the final turns here. As we do find ourselves back even. 4 health off each player. Tillin is out here, so don't get too used to these cards in hand.
Yeah, unless we see a magic come down, that's definitely going to be something that we can come to expect. Oh, Scarlet Witch, also a very good one. Probably going to want to get rid of that Adelan as we move into the third turn. But I guess it depends on what's drawn here. Maybe King looks at his hand and says, I'm not a big fan of all these big cards at the moment. I kind of want something a bit more flexible. But I would be a little surprised to not see Adelan get changed here, either by a Scarlet Witch or a Limbo, especially if you're able to bait out a Limbo as who gets priority here? Sims. So if Sims goes Limbo left right now, and he's able to Scarlet Witch reveals second, get rid of Limbo. That's going to flip the game on its head as well.
Yeah, well, I think the big thing is you have to look at this and go, who would benefit who would be hurt the most by needing to shuffle things into the deck? And I think in this matchup, that's going to be Sims, because Sims is relying on getting those randomly generated cards and then being able to play them for cheap. And so right now we are just going to see Mojo World coming in. So we are going to see it shuffled. No one electing to choose that. And I don't blame, King Candy for not playing that. I think
it's the same hand. Good for him.
It totally is. Thanks, Adelan.
We'll see Iron Lad come down. Now, are you, if you're King in this position, are you attacking Mojo World and looking to maybe swap it out with Scarlet Witch because, the opponent's going to definitely have the advantage in that regard? Or are you just going to kind of omit it entirely and say, you know what, you have Collector there already. Even if I do switch it, we've seen the random generation in your deck. You might be able to kind of outscale me there. I'm going to let you have that lane. I'm going to focus my attention mid and left.
Yeah, I would definitely think along those lines. Like, yes, if they went early and it wasn't, the Collector in place there, I kind of would probably look to steer away from that. But that being said, they've kind of already committed an Iron Lad here. And so they don't necessarily have enough power to definitively win both other locations, especially with the Bishop that got dropped there early. It's going to be very difficult to kind of, build up from this. And so they are in fact going to go in on Mojo World. I think it's safe to assume with the type of deck that's being run here by Sims, that Sims is going to fill that. And so you've got to start planning right now ahead of time. I either am going to be Scarlet Witching this or I need to drop a bunch in.
I think you leave. I think you retreat. No. I don't think this is enough because if you have to double commit to make sure that you number him in a Mojo World, then you're not going to have enough to go anywhere else. If you go just one card here, which is probably the right play, like White Queen followed by Scarlet Witch somewhere else, or maybe Scarlet Witch right to kind of get rid of Mojo World, then White Queen left. I don't think it's enough either. You're just kind of missing that Zabu right at this moment. I think this is a retreat. I don't think you can comfortably win all these locations. I don't know, man. I think you got to kind of dip out here.
Hard agree there. I think the big, if we do eventually see the retreat here, I think the big thing we'll see is kind of the defining factor of this game is taking that snap and allowing this to go up to 2 cubes. But it looks like King of Canada is considering trying to play this one out. No, there we go, hovering over the retreat button, and we'll take the loss there. Excellent snap from Sims, right? We talk often about how that's a big important part of this. As soon as we realized, hey, I've got a good step on Mojo World and have got a plan for Tinker's Workshop, gets the snap, gets the extra cube off of that, and now King of Canada down to 4 health, only a 6-4 lead currently. And now we're in round 5, which means high stakes minimum of 2 comes off the board. So any snap in this match does mean that King of Canada potentially could be looking at their final game.
And seeing the wonderful Titan show up as a location with 0 benefit for either player unless Sims looks to play that Nick Fury, which very well could be in the line of thinking now because Nick Fury on 4 allows 2 of those 6 drops to drop early on 5 and then 6 because Titan's in play, and especially a Collector now. I think this might be the play. If you have it for Sims perspective, Nick Fury is the way to go. And maybe, just maybe, that Scarlet Witch might be pretty valuable to hit on Titan if you're thinking about that from King's perspective. But I don't know. Would you even have that cross your mind if you're playing as King here?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a tricky one. King has played in a lot of tournaments. So has it crossed the mind? Probably. We'll see if that actually turns into anything here as an actual play line here. As Avengers Compound, man, I don't know. Sims just seems to really be getting those cards that you want early, down early. Collector and Angela, and then Bishop on top of that. It's like these are going to get to be very scary come, our final turn here with 2 more still to play. I think Sims is in a very comfortable position right now. Obviously, the threat of Zabu and Sarah is a great combo. We could see we're going to see 2 explosive turns at the end, and I think we're just going to have to go, all right, where are the numbers going to fall?
As we see a snap come in from Sims. That's a tough one to determine. Do you stay in? Do you lock it in for 4 cubes here as you're on the downswing of it for King of Canada? And there's Nick Fury too. So, yeah, and that's pretty nice to have the flexibility of a 6-drop to come down too, alongside a Kitty Pryde. Or just Nick Fury alone buffing the Collector could be enough,
Yeah, it's going to be tricky here. You could go for the Iron Lad and hope what's left in your deck that you would really be looking at as a potential, because Iron Lad can be very swingy, but kind of the question is what in there are you really looking to hit? You're not going to get your Iron Man. I don't think there's any other huge passive effects they're looking to really pull out right now. Shang-Chi isn't doing much. It's tricky. There doesn't seem to be a lot of great outs, but you're committed. This is how we're doing it. It's playing out. And Iron Man, which is a card you're so often looking to have come into effect here, you're giving up so much of this turn if you want to play him.
And as they're considering a Stegron here as well, that could be the play, but it's hard to say. I mean, you have a lot of flexibility here. I could really see a world where you just forget Iron Man and Mystique because you just don't have enough established presence on the board as is. You need to get down these Iron Lads, the White Queen, and Scarlet Witch just to generate more power naturally as opposed to even what could be doubled, right?
Yeah, definitely. As kind of trying to figure out here what to do, is going to slide Jeff over, try for something off of Iron Land and maybe the Stegtron. Pretty much is going all in. You can just drop in stats, trying to win these right too, and fingers crossed really, really heavily that whatever is coming out of Avengers Compound goes left as we go here, and the leader is going to come down. Iron Lad is...
Did they just hit Beast? Oh, they hit Beast on Iron Lad.
What? The Beast bumps everything back to end. Avengers Compound is going to be 1. Iron Lad, what's Iron Lad going to hit? Shuri. I mean, we know Avengers Compound is 1, but I think that's going to be just too much pressure. The leader pulling White Queen is potentially a deal breaker. And it's not enough. Dang!
Wow. That's really cool. That was a really cool play. As we see King of Canada go down. He went down swinging, quite literally, with Stegron there at the end. Very good game. Good match overall. Very cool last play. The leader being pretty spicy to kind of actually, it almost messed everything up with that bounce, but it worked out. He just had enough power to kind of spread across the board. And we're seeing Sims take down round 1. He's going to start out 1-0 in this, 8 rounds Swiss?
Yeah, 8 rounds. My goodness, we talked about the not knowing what cards to play around and the value in that. Who could have known that leader was coming? Leader is not in Sims' list. Leader came out of Nick Fury at one point, and then turns out when you're just dropping big stats, turns out leader is really good at countering someone dropping big stats. So coming out with a big play at the end here, and I apologize to my Monarch. He gave us a good run, but just could not keep up with random cards. What?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to watch, right? I mean, this is what we come to see. We come to see wacky, interesting plays. Even though the leader was really cool and it almost didn't work for him, it was just a really interesting play to see. I really thought as we see that Iron Lad that the leader copied hit a beast, I thought that Sims was done for that round. But I mean, look, he had enough power to represent either side. And the fact that King did not attack left in any capacity and maybe overcommitted mid a little bit really came in clutch for him.
Yeah, well, especially now that leader is kind of, back to that powerful area, right? Where it's And like the fact that leader is not quite, you know, at where leader was